you're wondering where my Halloween decorations are, I point you to this flamingo. Look how terrifying it is. It has that one giant unblinking eye, reminding you that this creature lives in constant 24/7 agony. With that out of the way, hello everyone, it's me, it's TRENT, and happy Halloween! I hope your movies are scary, for a good reason, that your pillowcases be full of candy, and of course that you go to bed tonight with a crucifix, or else Freddy Krueger's gonna come and slice you up in your dreams. Man, this intro got away from me.
It's Halloween. Everyone's entitled to one good scare, and I have the scariest job of all. Showing my face to you people. I know, I'm a walking jump scare. Ever since the dawn of moving pictures, horror has seemingly been adapted into every media known to man. From films that range from brilliantly made masterpieces to quick cash grab drive-in movie garbage, to the gripping pages of authors such as Stephen King, H.P. Lovecraft, and many others, one horror medium I think has had a tough translation from concept to finished product has to be the world of gaming.
Okay, before you go and strangle me in the comments, I just want to point out that there are some really good horror games out there. Things like Silent Hill, Alone in the Dark, Resident Evil, those games have stood the test of time. I mean, sure, they look a little rough around the edges because of the passage of said time, and, don't age as gracefully as you might want them to be, but they're still, pioneers of their genre. They're legendary. They've definitely claimed their spot as horror game royalty, but for every single one of those, we get a stinker like Amy, or The Letter, or even like a series like Five Nights at Freddy's that started off really promising, but continued to go downhill over time. It just goes to show how bad the horror genre can really get in video games.
It shouldn't be as hit-and-miss as it is, since horror games cut out the middleman that films have, where we have to experience the journey through the perspective of another character. Instead, we are the character, living out terrifying things. And yet...
So instead of looking at an actual game this year, I've decided to take a look at the fruits of other people's labors, because guaranteed, if you hate a video game, someone out there probably hates it more, but they actually have a background in actually coding a better game than the one that actually got released, and therefore can make something actually scary. That's right, we're delving into the realm of fan games.
So many different urban legends and creepypastas seem to plague the internet these days, ranging from tales of the faceless, supernatural entity known only as the Slender Man, to a clinically insane, eyelidless masochist called Jeff the Killer. It goes to show just how many depraved people there are in the world if they can come up with something this deranged and horrifying. In fact, many creepypastas seem to revolve around abnormalities and glitches that some people swear to have reported seeing in their own favorite video games, claiming that a demon or unexplained presence possessed and corrupted their game.
Now, one thing I've seemed to notice that has a treasure trove of spooky things attached to it more than any other video game console seems to be the Nintendo 64. I don't know what it is with this bad boy, but in all honesty, it makes the most sense. After all, this was Nintendo's first big jump into 3D, and considering they were still working with cartridges, which don't have the same amount of storage and memory as a disc, well, there was a lot of cut content and things that never saw the light of day, and it kind of makes for an overall unsettling feeling if you're playing these games for the first time. Now, if I were to talk about every single Nintendo 64 game that had a creepy background, I'd probably be here all day. Which is why for this Halloween season, I've decided to only look at a few choice games. I love 3. And today we're going to be starting off with The Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask, and the subject being Ben Drowned. So let's not waste any more time. Majora's Mask.
So, right off the bat, I'll admit I'm not the biggest Zelda player in the world. I've enjoyed my time with games like Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker, and Breath of the Wild, but I am a Zelda noob. I've tried going back and enjoying the original 2 games on NES, but they never hold my interest for too long. Unpopular opinion aside, I'll admit that the curious case of Ben Drowned is one of the main reasons I have interest in the series, whether it be real or not.
Imagine, if you will, the thrill of finding a rare gaming haul at your local flea market or garage sale, and because the owner doesn't know the true worth of said collection, you can often get it for a really well adjusted and very decent price. Heck, sometimes it might even be a bargain or a steal. Well, that's exactly the situation that Alex Hall found himself in.
Alex recounts finding the cartridge at an old man's garage sale, confused as to why this man, who doesn't fit the bill of your typical gamer, owns this particular copy of Majora's Mask, with him noting that the original label had been worn away and just labeled as Majora at the sale. When he got home and loaded the game up, Alex noticed a single remaining save file in the game's startup menu belonging to a boy named Ben. Encountering some strange and infrequent glitches after starting the game, Alex began a log of his events on 4chan, an anonymous website known for its depraved and often psychotic forums.
The problem with buying a game like this secondhand is that there's not exactly a warranty when things go wrong and you need to return it. So Alex did what any sensible person would do and decided to return back to the house that he bought the game from the following day, as more and more unexplained and uncontrollable phenomena began to unfold, but he was in for quite the surprise.
Returning to the seller's house, he finds it completely empty, and he surmises that the old man moved out soon after the garage sale. He would later find out from one of the man's ex-neighbors was that a main reason for his sudden move was that a couple years ago, the man lost his beloved son, Ben, in a freak accident when he drowned at the age of 12 years old. Haunted by the death of his son, the man sold all of his boy's possessions and fled town. Later that night, Alex began communicating with an otherworldly being through an AI on his computer, who identified himself as Ben, confirming Alex's worst fears. The spirit of the long-deceased child now inhabited the game.
Now, I'm sorry to be a party pooper, but I start to check out of this theory because of the very simple quandary. What was it again? Oh, yeah, that's right. Ghosts aren't real. Okay, I don't hate this theory at all. I think this is very creative, whoever put this together, but, I mean, I was hooked on all the spookiness that this creepypasta was giving me right up until the point they had the kid's ghost possess the AI of an EV Cleverbot to have a conversation with Alex. Hello? Stupid!
But the story gets even more bonkers, with the introduction of an actual cult called the Moon Children, who believe the events of the game a little too much, as they believe that a moon is going to crash on Earth and wipe humanity's existence off the face of the planet, or the cult believes they'll meet their ascension to another plane of understanding. Going even more off the rails, it's revealed that Ben was also a member of the cult too.
You know, at the age of 12.
And drowned himself intentionally as a sacrifice to the cult's higher power. At some point, Alex mysteriously disappears in 2018, before resurfacing in 2020 to finish the story, where he reveals that the Moon Children's predictions actually came true. Not only did the moon collide with the Earth, it split reality into two parallel timelines. Yep, we're dealing with a multiverse theory now. Alex states that he wasn't able to post in a long time due to a societal collapse that occurred in this alternate version of 2018, and alleges that he's not even the real Alex, as the Moon Children's godlike figure, the father, found and killed Alex, forcing an imposter to take his place to chronicle the future events of the story.
So, yeah, this is a very far-fetched and out-there kind of creepypasta, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't intrigued with the direction the story went. I mean, sure, it starts off very simple, but then there's a real-life cult inspired by the plot of the game, to there literally being a split in our universe. That's just... It goes to show you how creative some of these people are when they write these stories, but I think it's time that we move on to something I probably know a little bit more about. After all, I'm well more versed in the next game we're going to be talking about, which is Super Mario 64 and the Tale of the Wario Apparition.
So, in 2020, this video was uploaded to YouTube by a user simply named Bruh, titled "Every Copy of Super Mario 64 is Personalized." It shows Mario entering the Dire Dire Docks level room, only for this to appear and start chasing the player.
It should be noted that we actually did see the floating Wario head in the Dire Docks room. At E3 1996, this was shown as part of a tech demo Nintendo put together, where they had Charles Martinet do motion capture and voice work, where it actually showed Wario's head being projected onto the Dire Docks room screen, and basically showed everybody that despite being on a cartridge, the N64 was way more powerful than anyone gave it credit for. So, while that should be an open and shut kind of case to decide whether or not this creepypasta is real, there were some users who decided to take the ball and run with it, and allow this creepypasta to delve deeper and deeper into insanity.
What started as a Mandela effect everyone misremembered quickly spiraled into something bigger. Everyone began to notice some things that didn't look quite right. For example, the heads-up display shown in the video looks completely different from the one used in the main game. In fact, it looks like an early beta version of Mario 64, which people freaked the crap out about. The development of Mario 64 is one that is shrouded in mystery, and not many people seem to know much about. Even after Nintendo released any and all files on the game to the public during the pandemic, it only gave fans more questions than answers. I mean, a complete playable model of Luigi was found in the game's code, confirming that Mario's little brother was intended to be playable in the original version of the game before being removed at some point.
Most logical people chalked it up to there being limitations on the Nintendo 64's technology. After all, not only was it one of the first games of its kind, but it was also on a cartridge. I mean, they're already stretching the limitations very, very thin, especially considering Super Mario 64 is such a powerful game that it uses up almost the entirety of the storage that it's on. There was no way devs were going to figure out how to cram Luigi into this tiny little thing. There was just no way. It'd be impossible. You'd be stretching the limitations very thin and possibly even shoving the hardware closer and closer to a brink. But then you find some theories written by others who wouldn't take this explanation as a fact.
The reason Mario 64's development was so secretive, with little to no news or promotional material being released at all in the months leading up to the game's launch, was for one heartbreaking and downright disturbing fact. Luigi had died.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Trent, that's bogus. How could Luigi have died? He's a fictional character, and he's been in a bunch of Mario games since then, you handsome goon. Well, first off, thank you for calling me a handsome goon. Secondly, I know this all sounds crazy, but there is a fair bit to unpack and digest.
I can only cover so much in this one video, so if you want more of a deep dive on this theory, I recommend you check out the channel Greenio. This dude has brilliantly recovered lost footage of the development and early 1995 builds of the game to keep everyone in the loop of what Nintendo of America wanted to keep locked away from the public about the messed up production of this game. Through these various uploads and beta tests of Mario 64, subscribers were able to piece together the full narrative. Luigi was in fact dead. During the development, Nintendo experimented with a prototype AI that, upon turning the console on, would subliminally read the mind of the player and alter Mario 64 to the player's needs. For example, if you were an epileptic, some of the game's features and textures would be more sensitive to your condition, and so on and so forth. So that pretty much sums up the whole personalized aspect of the creepypasta, but the story goes even deeper. There exists a scrap pilot for a Nintendo-themed talk show called Nintendo Mania, which was a talk show hosted by a composite CGI Mario who would promote Nintendo games while talking directly to the audience. In this pilot, Mario sends Luigi to show off a sneak preview of the game while he hosts the show, but ignores his brother's pleas when he contacts Mario about being disturbed by the changing scenery of the castle. The AI introduces way too many new corridors and rooms for Luigi to explore, eventually trapping and drowning him in a prototype Dire Docks room, much to his brother's dismay.
So, with Luigi dead, Nintendo hastily removed the green guy from the game, but left a single reference to his existence within the backyard of the castle. Some of you may remember that there is a star-shaped statue in the fountain in the back courtyard of the castle, and it has a plaque that reads 2401 L is real. Now, many have interpreted this as a memorial to Luigi, and not just that, but they also believe that 2401 is a reference to the January 24th, 1995 build of the game, where Luigi was still a playable character before his unfortunate demise within the game's files.
So how does this tie into the whole Wario apparition? Simple. The AI still exists. It's out there, and when it manages to read the brainwaves of certain gamers who want to play as other characters except Mario, it'll integrate the 1995 beta test version of the game into the Dire Docks room and send Wario after the player, which can be interpreted as Luigi's ghost haunting Mario by sending the Wario head to taunt the Jumpman and make him confront the guilty head about sending his brother directly to his death. However, the N64 was never meant to process a polygon count this high, and immediately puts strain on the console. At best, it can cause blindness or stroke on an unsuspecting player. Which sounds bad, until you take a look at this home video and realize what this game is like at its worst.
Nintendo tried to bury the lead on this version of the game. They kept quiet on it, and they even pushed back a planned Christmas 1995 release to a September 1996 release, just to keep fans guessing on what actually laid inside the foundations of this game. However, there have been some recovered commercials that promote the game's original release date, and, well, they're truly a sight to behold.
Is back, and a whole new world's opened up to him with the new Super Mario 64. Use it right. Will you play the game, or will it play you?
This is a test. This station is conducting a test of the emergency broadcast system. This is only a test.
Well, folks, we've nearly reached the end of our journey this Hallows Eve night. I figured, why not end with a bang? We're not just going to be looking at a beloved game that people have taken and crammed a bunch of dark lore and twisted imagery into. No, far from it. In fact, we're taking a look at a game that was built from the ground up. It has no remaining innocence behind it, and it already has its own lore and tragic backstory. But it technically doesn't even exist. Oh yes. We're talking about the curious case of Catastrophe Crow, better known to many as Crow 64.
How do I even begin to explain this game? There's so much detail out there about its rocky development and inescapable cancellation, yet there's so much left unsaid and kept vague because of one man and one man alone, Manfred Lorenz. For those of you that don't know this man, he was the greatest game developer who never was. Born in rural Germany, Manfred Lorenz launched his own independent video game studio, Opus Interactive, which is best known for its smash hit Ocean Quest on the Super Nintendo. However, the game's localization meant that it never got big in the US, but that didn't stop Lorenz from aiming for something much bigger for the studio's next big project. Following the announcement of the Nintendo 64, Lorenz looked to finally make the game he had always hoped for his daughter, Thea, which would be based on a cartoon character she had created called Katastrophen Kra, which translates out to Catastrophe Crow. Lorenz went to work and worked long, laborious days to put together a rough prototype of the game that would eventually be lost to time, planning to release it for the Christmas season of 1999, as Mario 64 would already be out and there would be no other direct competition, as it would be near the end of the N64's lifespan.
Things were looking promising when Lorenz and company showed the game off at Space World 1997, officially revealing it to the public. With a working demo that they allowed the public to play, it looked very promising, as Lorenz even said there was going to be groundbreaking exploration and an eternal revival system, whatever that meant. But then things started to get a little worrying.
The release date ended up getting pushed back to February 2000. Since the game had been in development all this time and was so close to releasing that Christmas, many just assumed that Lorenz, who was a lifelong perfectionist, just wanted the game to be at its absolute best. But then February's date was then changed to an April date, and then another few months, and another few months, and the date kept getting vague as it was pushed back for a release sometime in the summer, before being stamped for a late 2000 release. Opus never issued a statement to the public about what was going on, but rumors began to circulate that the controlling Lorenz had been hiding something about the development of the title, with many staff members remarking that, during their time at Opus, Lorenz became a bit of a recluse. He rarely went home, he worked through many sleepless evenings, and continued to work on the game day and night. Eventually, they accrued so much debt, $10 million in fact, that he was forced to lay off every single employee he had except for himself, opting to work on the game by himself. Many internet forum posts from anonymous employees imply that something happened at Lorenz's house, and that one developer even confronted Lorenz in his office about releasing the game in its current state just to think of the player. Lorenz gave the chilling response, "The player is gone." In 2001, the remaining employees were furloughed just as Nintendo's next console was announced. Debt collectors arrived to serve notice to Lorenz, but he was nowhere to be found. In fact, neither was any remaining dev kits or prototypes of Crow 64. It was stolen along with several work computers the day Lorenz disappeared. 2 days later, a boat belonging to Lorenz was found floating in the North Sea off the coast of Cuxhaven. None of the equipment Lorenz had stolen was inside the boat, nor was it ever recovered. The only thing left behind was a neatly folded set of clothes and a potential note written by Lorenz to his estranged wife, Marta, who had moved out of Germany 6 months prior. Lorenz's body was never found.
Marta, you were always in the right, and remained it till the last day. It's impossible to look into the people's heads to decode their behavior. to find out why we are so cruel to one another. We both did what we thought was right, and yet we can accuse one another of insanity. You have only taken away from me, and I from you, so the world can remain open. My path is set in place. I have, finally, gone home. So, with that chilling note out of the way, and there having been no sign of the wrens for over 21 years, that must mean this well is all dried up. Nothing to go off of, except for some Nintendo Power promotional material and some behind-the-scenes footage that was taken of Opus before its closure. It seems as though there's no record of this game anywhere. Or so we thought.
Yes, I managed to come across a development cartridge of the game. And please don't ask me how I found it, because quite frankly, it's a miracle I managed to get my hands on this to begin with, just in time for Halloween.
So now, you're about to watch what may just be one of the only few reviews of Catastrophe Crow on this platform or any others on the internet, as I attempt to find the mystery behind Manfred Lorenz.
Upon starting the game, we get a brief message telling us that he's not been home in days. Maybe he'll talk to you. Before we're then thrust into the game's open world, pointing us in the direction of a large office building clearly inspired by Opus. From here, we can enter the office and jump into various computers to access different levels.
There's not much to say about the actual gameplay. I mean, it's competent, and whatever potential it had is certainly there, but we're not here to talk about that. There's something far more interesting at play.
After a while, the game starts to glitch out and deteriorate. Whole incomplete sections of levels start popping up randomly. Various NPCs appear in the distance, only to be wiped away the moment we get close to it. It's all very unsettling. There's one point where I noticed a worker crow in the distance walking down a hallway. When I turned the corner to see where he went, the hallway leads to a dead end with nothing but a wall and a filing cabinet in the way. Or so I thought.
Did I just see Manfred Lorenz program his own into his game behind a playable boundary? What is this?
The final level had me just as speechless, because not only were all the textures messed up, but behind my crow was a house, the exact same house where the Lorenz family had once lived. As I soon stepped inside, I find myself in control of the older crow from the boat scene, before heading upstairs to find a headless, photorealistic crow hooked up to life support in bed, breathing in pain and gasping for air, just as the game crashes.
This mystery is still a fairly new one, and breakthroughs are still being made to this very day. But the fact that I was able to be a part of this slice of the internet and experience a Nintendo 64 game that only very few have had the pleasure of playing, it's kind of crazy. Hello? Somebody out here. Peace.